Okay, welcome everybody to this latest pre-EHFF webinar, EHFF being the European Health and Fitness Forum. This is a warm-up for the main event, which takes place virtually on the 3rd of November. We're here today to look at a particular issue, and that we've described in our title as the rise of the health specialist, the evolution of the personal trainer's position. Just to briefly introduce myself before I then introduce our panel members today. So I'm Julian Berriman. I'm the director of EuropeActive's Professional Standards Committee, and the Professional Standards Committee has responsibility for educational standards, for various occupational roles within the fitness and physical activity sector. And we have something called our sector qualifications framework, and that consists of standards for personal trainers, gym instructors, group fitness instructors, and other occupational roles within our sector. So with the advent of COVID and some of the ramifications, some of the implications of COVID and how it's affected our industry, there are some things that we may need to consider in terms of those educational standards. And that's sort of what we're here today to discuss with our panelists. Just like to thank our sponsors for this webinar, without whom, of course, we wouldn't be doing this. So thanks to all those guys for their support. So let's now move to our rather illustrious panel today. A bit of a stellar lineup, actually. Very pleased to have everybody on board. So myself as the moderator, Michol Dalcourt from the Institute of Motion, based in California, although Michol is of Canadian descent. I go back a little way with Michol. We've done some work together in the past, so it's great to have him on board. I've also got another Canadian, Krista Scott-Dixon from Precision Nutrition. Krista, I believe, is the director of the curriculum at Precision Nutrition, which is a very prestigious and renowned company. So very pleased to have Krista with us today. And we have our own Anna Bogdanova. I say our own because Anna works with me on EREPS, the European Register of Exercise Professionals, which is what it says on the tin, a register for fitness professionals across Europe who have reached a suitable level in terms of their qualifications and their experience as a fitness professional, as a personal trainer or a gym instructor. And EREPS is a way of recognizing that. Anna Bogdanova is a personal trainer herself. She operates largely online. But Anna is also one of my deputy directors for the Professional Standards Committee, with particular responsibility for EREPS. So enough of all of that. Let's now get on to a discussion. So if I could sort of come to you in turn and just do maybe, guys, a fairly brief introduction to yourselves. So who should we start with? Let's start with Krista, shall we?
Sure. Thanks, Julian. So I'm the director of curriculum at Precision Nutrition. And so my job involves essentially educating coaches. So at Precision Nutrition, we coach clients, and then we also coach coaches on how to coach. And so we've had about 100,000 coaching students go through our certification programs. And so we now have a fairly wide range of educational programs. So we have certifications, we have what we call our Precision Nutrition Academy, which is kind of like deep dives into specialist areas like change psychology or how to coach athletes or specific kinds of diets like plant-based eating. And so my job is essentially to create and supervise the creation of all of this curriculum. So any educational product that comes out of Precision Nutrition has to go through me. So in a nutshell, that is what I do. Although I did start off as a coach, I actually started off as a personal trainer 20 odd years ago. So I feel like I've worn all of the hats that someone could wear in this industry in a way.
Thank you, Krista. These things always turn into a slight competition as to who's been in the industry the longest, of course.
And how good we look for being so old. Maybe that's
oh,
the
exactly.
competition,
Well, don't we all look so amazingly good? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I used to be a director of curriculum at a training company in the UK, Premier Training International. So I have some appreciation of the work you do, Krista. But yeah, thank you for that. To keep the whole gender balance here, we'll go with Michol.
Yeah, thank you, Jules and Krista as well, and good morning, good afternoon, depending on when this is kind of in front of folks. But yeah, my name is Michol Dalcourt. I am the founder of the Institute of Motion, as well as the creator of a functional fitness product called Viper. And at IOM, what we do is we're an applied health and human performance company. And so what we look at is, we look at strategies, we look at education, information, and solutions around health and human performance. And we gear that lens towards fitness, towards healthcare, and towards performance. And that could be elite performance for an athlete. That certainly could be life performance for an individual, whether that's an executive or, in terms of just life balance. We look at those indicators, we look at that information, we look at logic models and solutions around that. So that perspective has allowed us to lean into the fitness industry with a voice around health and human performance, as well as the healthcare sector, which, we're not necessarily managing crisis care or disease states, but we are certainly looking at prevention modeling around how to delay and offset malady. And so that perspective, I think, gives us, what we would say is kind of perhaps a unique lens of how to approach things. Certainly, as Krista alluded to before, the idea of coaching, the idea of navigating these experiences through a lifespan, and to inject health span on a person's lifespan is really at the heart of what we're trying to do. And certainly it's the topics that we engage in on a day-to-day basis. So that's taken me from Alberta, Canada, to California some 14 years ago. And, we've been here ever since. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Great stuff, Michol. Thank you for that. And Anna?
Well, I'm a little starstruck here, actually, because I've been following Precision Nutrition for since you started, I think, and I've probably read every blog that you wrote, Krista. And that's kind of a funny story, because my background academically is in change management. But when I was 23, I had a huge stress breakdown, or fatigue, and everything went crashing down. And while I was recovering and thinking how to get my body and my mind back on track, I was just searching information online everywhere. And I certainly read everything that Precision Nutrition wrote at that time, and actually got very motivated and inspired by the thought that so much help could be found online. While I was kind of getting myself back on track and trying to rehab myself, I took a lot of education, and also as a personal trainer, and some endocrinology and neurology, and actually started to work as personal trainer and using Precision Nutrition largely as a huge resource at the time, and also an inspiration in actually how to do things differently. So I'm very honored to be here in this panel, actually, together with you, Krista, because Precision Nutrition has played a large role in where I am today, even though you might not know it. But that's what interested me, actually, when I started working as a personal trainer. And when I got my first child, I kind of went online because I couldn't be there with my clients. I had to find another way. And the online business idea started growing. But the angle that I find very exciting is exactly what I was through myself, because I had different goals and things I wanted to do with my physique. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to look better. My clients wanted to get stronger and to look better. But then something came in between, and that something was health problems. So I think that the subject we're touching today about the development of a role of a personal trainer and how we can help our clients better is very relevant, because we do need to be aware that there are some things that we do need to approach holistically to actually help our clients with the end result. We need to be aware of some of the things that are happening, and the homeostasis and the hormones and stuff like that. So I think that's a very interesting subject we had today to discuss.
Good. Yes, me too, actually. Yes. So look, so we've touched on that briefly. So the personal trainer role, or other roles within our sector. So we've certainly seen through the COVID period some new developments, but not really new developments. They're perhaps accelerations of trends that were already there. That we need as an industry to move towards a more holistic approach, a more health and well-being based approach. We've also seen the rise of digital options, and for obvious reasons, but which was happening in our industry, but has been massively accelerated. But we have undoubtedly been talking a lot over the last 18 months about this maybe shift from just the focus on aesthetics and how people look, the physical goals that they may have and how they go about achieving them, to a wider focus on not just the physical aspects of health, but also the social and mental aspects of health and well-being. So I was actually, I did a bit of searching around this morning and found something that Krista had put together that sort of summed up a lot of what I want to talk about today. And you were talking there, Krista, about coaching for deep health. And I thought, ooh, that sounds good. And you used the phrase becoming a coaching alchemist. And this is someone who turns superficial physical goals into substantive life gold. So that sort of struck me. So maybe you could expand on that and what precisely you sort of mean by that.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think one of the best ways to illustrate what deep health is to illustrate what it isn't. And I think Anna's story is very common, actually, believe it or not, and it really illustrates what deep health is not. And I think as trainers, people who are in the fitness industry, many of us have probably had a time when we were extremely physically fit, or we were performing physically at a high level, or we were, aesthetically wherever we thought that we wanted to be. But in other aspects of our lives, whether our relationships, our mindset, our emotional health, our philosophical health, our reason for being, we were not healthy, right? We were prioritizing some physical goal usually over everything else, and other things in our life suffered. We can all probably think of times or clients in which that's happened, right? So the flip side of that is deep health, which is really this idea that you are thriving in all of the dimensions of life. So we have come up with 6 dimensions. It could be as many as you want. The idea is really just to think about this multidimensionally. So we divide it into physical health. Obviously, it's pretty straightforward. Mental health, which I actually think of as like cognitive health. Like, how does your brain work? How do you learn and think and process information and solve problems? And then emotional health, obviously, can you feel a full range of emotions? Can you express your emotions? Are you able to manage your emotions? We have social health or relationship health. So are you connected? Do you feel supported? Do you have relationships in your life that feel strong and stable and secure, and where you can be genuine, you can be yourself? We have what we call existential health. Some people might think of it as spiritual health or philosophical health. We try to kind of make it, a range of options for however people show up to that. But really, a purpose in life. It's a purpose. Yeah, it's having a purpose, a sense of meaning, like having some kind of connection to a bigger picture. And this doesn't have to be a grand project. Something as simple as keeping a houseplant alive. There are studies on older people showing that if they were given responsibility for a houseplant, like, this is your job, keep this thing alive, they lived longer, they felt better, they were more mobile, more healthy. So like, your purpose doesn't have to be saving the world. It can be saving this houseplant. And then the final dimension of deep health, we consider environmental health. And so that can be very practical. I mean, we're all thinking about climate change right now. And we were just talking before we got on this call, I'm in Vancouver, Canada. Half of the province is on fire thanks to climate change right now. I'm sure the other half will be washed away by rising sea levels in a few decades. So that can be very practical, but it can also be more intangible, right? What is around you? What is the environment that you live in? What's your home like? What's your workplace like? What is your social environment? What's your cultural environment? What's the society that you live in? Basically, all of the things, tangible and intangible, that are around you. And so those 6 dimensions, ideally, we want to at least attend to them if we're thinking about what it means to be fully healthy. And the other piece is that when you amplify one, often another one comes along with it. Right? So we can all think of clients where their physical health was improved, for example, by joining a group exercise class. Right? So now they have social health, and their social health boosts their physical health because now they have a reason to come to the class. So it's a very, like, these dimensions all sort of intersect and reinforce each other. And so we think this is a much more interesting and inspiring, but also a realistic way of thinking about health, because this is how health actually works, right? We can't just isolate our body from everything else that is around and inside of us.
Oh, fantastic! So it's a whole person type approach.
Whole person, whole life in context as well.
Yes, and the word that keeps coming to me listening to you speak there is, by addressing those different aspects, that would appear to me and is likely to be more sustainable. So that this isn't about a short-term impact. This is about a lifespan thing, and I think that's a word that Michol used earlier. And I know Michol, that I know you've got a particular model that you've been working on, 4Qs.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks, Jules. What we would look at is modeling, and so what Krista alluded to was the idea of a model. It's an idea of a representation of something that allows us an opportunity to clarify or to have an actionable plan moving forward. And if that's with a coach, or if for an individual, if that feels like they've got more locus of control, it allows us to clarify. And, I think what's been generally accepted on these determinants of health by the WHO and other organizations is largely what Krista alluded to, which was these other aspects of individual determinants of health. There are societal determinants of health as well, socioeconomic strata, genetics, all of these things. There's less locus of control in those. But they are all interlinked in terms of what determines health outcomes. And what we've done is we've looked at those buckets, as well as the more detail within certain buckets of, let's say, physical, mental, emotional, socioeconomic. And what we try to do is try to ascertain or expand upon these logic models. So one of the examples of that would be if we look at this notion of variability, and the notion of variability being useful in context for an individual to navigate. And if we use a very practical and probably a very common example, which would be in the physical bucket or the physical domain of health, a lot of individuals engage in physical mechanical stress. And they do it in a repetitive way. And so that serves their goal, perhaps. And what we want to do is always match that. Does it serve their goal short-term, medium-term, and long-term? And so these become thoughts and considerations as one puts a plan together. And if we look at the notion of variability, we see it in life all the time. Life is specifically variable. And so, these inputs are what biology has self-organized for, thousands of years. And so we use them as consideration points. And what we've developed are these models that you referred to, Jules, as 4Q models, which really stand for 4 quadrants. And what it does, these are basically in place to simplify considerations so that we can avoid ideological or dogmatic thinking. Like I often say that the fitness, specifically the fitness industry and fashion are very trend-based, right? And there's no judgment to that. It's just, the realities of what we do. And we navigate towards certain trends that are popularized in certain periods of time. And we're all leaning into that. And that's great. But I think what we need to do is also kind of pull ourselves back and look at the perspective. If we look at an example of metabolic flexibility, certainly a term that's been used in research, it's a hallmark for health, physical health, physiological health. And so as we look at these programming aspects, these 4Q models allow us to look at and consider variable inputs so that we can actually marry the idea of a person's goal. Whether it's aesthetic or anything else, great. If that is important for them, if that is sacrosanct in their life, then that's important for a coach to recognize. And there's no judgment. We want that for you as long as you want that. And so to be able to marry the aspect of a goal of a person and their readiness, and that could be physical readiness, that could be mental, emotional readiness, that could be social readiness, right? Do they have the network around them to support what they want to do? And we marry that with, this idea of health and sustainability to that goal. And so these 4Q models allow us to do that. We use these as inputs. We use these as structures to lean on in order for us to be able to deliver an experience or coaching experience commensurate with what a person wants. Okay,
Michol. Yeah, there's a couple of things that I picked up on there. I mean, variability. I guess your variability in the physical, maybe in the metabolic sense, in terms of a variety of inputs. I guess. Rather than an over focus on one particular thing, and phrases like pattern overload and all that sort of stuff starts to occur to me in that sense. But also, but that sort of listening to Krista, we're talking about variability in terms of, how we approach that individual from a multi-dimensional kind of approach as well. But one of the things that sort of jumped out at me particularly was you mentioned locus of control, and I think that has a lot of sort of implications for the people that we work with in terms of this whole person type approach, that we want to change that locus of control, because maybe more traditionally in our industry we've been sort of quite prescriptive in our approach, and the locus of control of the client has been quite external, i.e. they've been reliant or felt that they're reliant on the trainer, and maybe the trainer has reinforced that to some degree. But if we're to truly be successful in this whole person approach, then we need to switch perhaps that locus of control to more of an internal locus of control, so the individual takes responsibility for their health and well-being, and takes on a more active role in that rather than being passive in that process. Maybe Anna, I don't know if you want to pick up on something there, and how you approach that with what you do.
Definitely, I think the area of self-mastery, if you could call it that the client actually experiences that they are able to do something, and they are able to repeat that, and they're able to actually see that it works for them. It's quite important, and I think that one of the fears that you can have as a trainer, initially anyway, is that your client kind of, you both wish that for the client that they can do things on their own, but then you also wish that the client might come back more, and that is an interesting dilemma, because I have a track record of my clients being with me, being active in my communities for 7 years in average. And you could say that that was because they were not able to do that on their own, but that's actually quite the opposite, because when they experience that they can do things, and they actually can do things without me, because I actually teach them home training and do things like 5 minutes a day, so that they can do that in their own tempo. They come back because they like to actually be in a community of other people who also do that on their own. So I think that if you, as a personal trainer, actually experience when you switch the focus from you being as this person that your client relies on, and you have to give them new cues. I mean, there are trainers that say, well, you have to change your exercises every 10 days, because then the client becomes reliant on the trainer finding new exercises, and then you're kind of caught into that dimension. But if you kind of have the courage to shift that and trust that if you create an environment where your client gets a feeling of them being able to do that on their own, they will actually come back, but they will come back for this, for the social health actually, or for the reinforcement of their empowerment. So there are some different dimensions that I think that opens up for being able to provide as a trainer, as a coach. And I also think that the things that Krista and Michol talked about before, we discuss that regularly. What is the area that the personal trainer actually should do something within, and what is, I mean, when should you refer out? And when we talk about deeper health, and we talk about several dimensions, then I think it's important to talk about the personal trainer not being an expert on all these fields, but more moving to the role of a generalist, that you are actually aware that things are connected, and you're aware that all of these things actually count into an allostatic load, and that you help to coach your client to understand that all these things are connected, and then help them find out in which area do they need more help. Then you can actually co-work with somebody else, with an expert in that field. But I think that we have to extend the personal trainer role in actually being able to mirror that wholeness for the client and being aware how things are connected.
Okay. Yeah, I think some excellent points there. I don't know, Krista, if you've got anything to say on that, on how we get that individual to take on a more active role in their own health and well-being, and how you best achieve that. But also I'll come back to the point on when is appropriate to refer out, because that has implications in terms of scope of practice that I think we probably need to talk about. But Krista, do you have anything you want to say on that sort of more active role of the client?
I think that's a great point. And I was sort of nodding my head like one of those bobblehead dolls to everything Anna was saying, because I think you've tapped into so many important pieces that we could talk about really for quite a while. But in terms of a client taking a more active role, one of the exercises that we actually do with our clients is called sphere of control. And one of the things that I found as a trainer and a coach is that people often try to over control areas that they can't control, and they under control or don't realize that they have control in areas where they do actually have control, right? So, they might try to over control their body's response to, let's say, food restriction, right? Let's say you have someone who's a chronic dieter, they've dieted really hard, they cut calories really hard, and at some point their hypothalamus, their mission control in their brain is like, we're not doing this anymore, right? So hunger ramps up, behavioral inhibition goes down, so they just feel out of control and they start eating. So then they think, oh, I have to control this more, and they try to control it harder, right? What they don't realize is they don't have a lot of control over their body's homeostatic mechanisms. Like, they're trying to control the wrong thing. On the other hand, they have a ton of control over their daily life routines, their behaviors, their kind of planning and preparation skills, their self-management, self-regulation skills, how they set boundaries in their lives and relationships with their work. So they have a ton of control. So what we do is we just draw 3 circles and say, okay, this little circle is you're pretty much almost total control of this. And then here's a circle where you have moderate control, maybe daily routine kind of fits in there. There's some unexpected things, but generally you have maybe a similar daily routine. And then you have all this stuff that's out of your control. What does your spouse do? What is traffic like? What is weather? All these things. And we get them to get really clear on what can you control, what can you not control, and then how do we just double down on those areas that you can control. Like, if you can control your behaviors, how can we give you the skills and the practices and the daily actions that are going to help you really do this area better? And I think, to Anna's point, that really brings a sense of empowerment. And think a lot of trainers feel like, oh, if I empower the client, they're not going to need me anymore. But Anna said something important, which is the feeling. And it's so important to remember as coaches and trainers, we're not selling a workout. We are selling a feeling. We're trying to help people feel the way that they want to feel. So if someone walks out of a training session feeling empowered and inspired and energized, that is an amazing feeling. And it also creates tremendous engagement and connection with the trainer. So if your client feels energized, engaged, inspired, and connected to you, like, that's incredible for your business. And I mean, I'm not surprised that Anna's had clients for several years, because that's exactly what keeps people coming back. So, you know, me empowering someone does not mean that they just like, you know, leave, see you later, bye. It's not like that. What makes them not come back is feeling disempowered,
Yes.
disengaged, de-energized, if that's a word. That's what makes them not come back.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Selling a feeling. That's it, really, isn't it? This sense of well-being, this sense of being in control, and maybe many of us at times don't. It's really interesting, that approach, though, Krista, to identify those things that are more susceptible to control and those things that we can't affect so readily. Okay. Michol, anything to add there? I mean, I keep hearing, and I hear a lot in the industry, and I think I'm a bit of at times I feel like a bit of a dinosaur, but that we use coaching as a term now much more than we sort of tend to use training and trainer. So there seems to be there's a shift there, and I think that shift sort of picks up on many of the issues that we're sort of talking about here. So yeah, can you pick up on that? What's the difference between a trainer and a coach?
Well, I think I'd love to pick up on what Anna laid down, and then what Krista just spoke about, which is when we look at the idea of going back to your question, personal trainer into coach, and what does that actually mean, right? And there are a lot of different definitions of that, but the idea of taking an individual through a journey, and if that's in the personal training realm, giving a person more resources to be more resourceful, right? This idea of, someone by your side, guiding the experience, inquiring with appreciation, uncovering different facets within a person's life, knowing that a person is the expert in their own life. And for an individual to be able to uncover that as a coach or a trainer is the process of getting towards, I think, what both Anna and Krista spoke about, which is, when we look at change psychology, it's very complex, but one could look at it through the awareness, adoption, advocacy journey, right? So I am aware of something. So let's say Krista just made me aware of these spheres of control. And let's say I was never aware of that before. Now that awareness with, some inquiry, with some acknowledgement, with some practice, I then engage in that, right? So I adopt those strategies perhaps, and I adopt them, with encouragement. I adopt them with, a sustained approach. Over time, that will probably, in most cases, lead to advocacy, which is this idea that now that I embody that's what I represent, that's what I emote, that's what I exude, that's who I am. And at that point, I don't leave the experience. And I think that was echoed by, both Anna and Krista. I don't leave that experience, I advocate for it. And what that means is that now, not only am I empowered to own that and live that, I can actually share and embolden that within others. And so that becomes a very powerful reinforcing mechanism, right? Because now that behavior is cemented in and it's part of who I am. So that journey of awareness, adoption, advocacy, if it's through the lens of the label of personal trainer, or if it's through the lens of the label of a coach, okay. I think, more practically, there are, as was mentioned before, there are scope of practice elements within personal training and coaching that I think need to be clarified. To be a certified or board certified coach, I need certain education, certain skills. And so, that's more the practicality of it. But the idea of a personal trainer becoming a coach is really the acknowledgement around an individual having the capacity, having the knowledge and experience to usher an experience for another person where it's self-driven by that client or individual, encouraged and facilitated by a skilled individual. We'll call that a coach.
Yeah.
And that idea of changing behavior or modifying behavior or recognizing behavior through the health span of an individual, I think is where all of this discussion is leading towards. And I think the recognition of the other determinants of health are coming into play, obviously, as you alluded to before, accelerated perhaps by the pandemic, that people are realizing that my mental, my emotional, my social health is also important. I would well imagine that 18 months ago, none of us on this discussion, had ever used the phrasing socially distanced. Like, we never heard that phrasing in that context and that syntax before. And now we do. And so if we unpack that, socially distanced, goodness, that doesn't sound too healthy, right? In terms of our social well-being. And yet, we've prioritized certain health outcomes publicly because of, what's in front of us in terms of the pandemic. So, I think that, largely, whether we label it personal training or coaching, there is a recognition of a skill that perhaps we need to develop, or an awareness of what, folks want to usher in terms of their experience of health.
That's brilliant, Michol. Yeah, that's a really good summary of maybe that distinction and that journey we're maybe going on as a profession to some degree, and maybe at the heart of that. I think I've just been joined by my daughter, who's crawling along the floor on her hands and knees. So please,
that's good social, Jules. That's good social health right there, though.
Yeah, there you go. No, get the family involved. Why not?
Yeah.
I think that is an indication of how the role is developing. But at the heart of that seems to me, that understanding of behavior, of behavioral management, of different techniques that might support that, and you might refer to things like motivational interviewing and things like this and things like that. And I know, Anna, that I'm sure that's at the heart of a lot of the work that you do.
Yes, definitely. And I smiled when the topic of feelings came up, because we've had so many discussions about how to actually include the soft skills into the qualification and the standards.
Yes,
because
indeed.
It's something that's a little more intangible. But I think that I speak for many of my colleagues, and myself inclusive, several years before, that some of the biggest frustrations that you can have as personal trainer, that is kind of feeling the pressure of being able to give all the right answers. And you're kind of reading and qualifying and taking courses and more courses and getting knowledge and qualifications to be able to kind of like answer on the spot. So if the client says, I feel this, or I have this problem, then you have to kind of give the solution. And I think while working with people, I realized that one of the most important things we can do is actually not give all the right answers, although we have to have like the fundamentals of qualifications, no doubt about that, but to create a safe space in which our clients can practice, fail, and try again without being judged. And that's, I mean, I don't even know what qualification could kind of enable that, but I think that it goes beyond that. It goes beyond soft skill and interviewing techniques. It's about human beliefs. It is, what do you believe about the other person? Do you believe they're competent? Do you believe that they will be able to do that on their own? Do you believe that it's dangerous that they make a mistake or not? And we, as personal trainers, need to educate ourselves on what glasses or what lens do we see our clients through. And I mean, I think that's a very interesting topic. But it is really hard to kind of grab your arms around that. How do you learn that? I mean, maybe I'm definitely sure that Krista can maybe have some answers on that, because you do coach the coaches. But that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, that it's about how you see the other person and what beliefs you have that kind of defines their abilities to help themselves.
Krista, would you like to respond? Because Anna is sort of rather directed that at you. So this safe space that clients can be in, and Michol spoke about spoke about a health journey, that we're supporting them through a health journey. We're creating that safe space. We're talking about longevity in terms of how long clients stay with us, and sustainability, all of these things. Anything to add there?
The one thing I think I'd want to add, other than we have a whole change psychology course in our PN Academy, but one of the things to add here is that I think, this conversation has been somewhat conceptual. We've been talking about ideas and concepts and kind of high level things, feelings and that sort of stuff. The first piece, I think I've heard this from people when I do talks. They'll say, well, this is all really nice, but my clients want results. And my response to that is always, you can't get results unless you understand this dimension of human existence. And the top performers do the most of this, right? The top performers are the ones that are working the mindset, the emotional regulation, like the belief systems, all of that stuff. So this is like built in to high performance. And in a way, it's almost what distinguishes the elite athletes from the kind of serious amateur exercisers, because a lot of the times the elite athletes are the ones that are set up with all of these supports around change and emotional regulation and mindset, all that kind of stuff. Whereas often a serious exerciser is trying to go it alone without this kind of coaching support and really struggling. So that's just one piece I wanted to say. But the main thing here is understanding that all of these intangible things that we're describing have tangible tools that a coach can use. So like something as simple as a sentence, a way of phrasing things, a particular phrase that you use, a particular way that you ask a question, like this can get really, really concrete. And it's things that you can do literally in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute. So we're not talking about, rearranging our clients' spiritual framework or, taking them on some kind of psychedelic vision quest here, right? What this boils down to are very tangible, practical choices and tools and techniques and tactics that a coach or a trainer can use. So, for example, we talked about scope earlier, and I think that's a really great framework for this. So out of my scope as a coach is handling someone else's anxiety disorder, right? That's way out of scope. But let's say someone's about to do a big lift and they're scared. I just took a weekend kayaking course. We had to flip the kayak upside down, and I had to hang upside down underwater and not freak out. A coach can help me regulate my anxiety in that moment. Okay, before you do this big, 1 rep max snatch, which is terrifying, right? Before you flip the kayak over, before you do this scary thing, let's just take a couple minutes and help you prepare for that in this moment. So that's the difference, right? I can't handle your generalized anxiety disorder, but I can help you get prepped for this lift right now in the next 10 seconds using very practical tools.
I think that's brilliant, isn't it? Because ultimately that's what we need here, is some tangible tools that we can apply within our scope of practice. So, as I and the PSC consider how, we might need to add to our standards, that's really it. Because many people would say, well, look, you're actually suggesting that personal trainers here should step beyond their scope of practice. Are they really in a place to support mental health, emotional health, all of these areas? But I think they are within certain parameters, right, Krista?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is that for a lot of people, especially in the US where you have to pay for your healthcare, for a lot of people, a trainer or a coach is the frontline healthcare provider, right? They may be the first person that you come and see when you're diagnosed with a health issue, or you have anxiety, your mental health is suffering. You think, oh, I'll just go to the gym and work off some stress, right? So a lot of the times, this is the reality of our job. We are the frontline healthcare providers. And I heard a really great analogy from Dr. Chris Winter, who's the author of The Sleep Solution. He's collaborating with us on this sleep course we're doing. And he said, often being a trainer, sleep course, sleep, stress, and recovery, actually. So
wow.
Sneak peek, super secret. Yeah. But he said it's like being a wilderness medic, right? So you're not the surgeon that might operate on someone's broken leg after they fell down on a hike, but you can give them, basic first aid. You can stabilize them. You can help them get to safety. You can throw them a rope when they've fallen in a hole, right? So you're like the first line emergency on the spot wilderness medic. And I love that because anyone can be, if you're on a hike with your buddy, they're the only person there, right? So no one thinks about scope of practice. You're just trying to move the situation forward a little bit. And so for a lot of people, working with a coach may then open up willingness to go and see another healthcare provider and really get the care that they need. Mm-hmm.
Michol, any what do you think of that? I think that's great, isn't it? A wilderness medic. That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, it is, and I think just picking up on that, I think it's important for the industries of fitness and prevention health to understand, where they can manage within, a person's experience, and where they can't. I believe Anna spoke about this before, and talked about this idea of referral. And often we use the saying refer in instead of refer out, and it is semantics to a certain degree, but in our minds, this idea of referring in is acknowledging the fact that we've, as professionals, have done our due diligence by knowing a network, and we refer into that network. And for us, that little saying is always reinforcing of the fact that I know my limits of where I can add help. And when it goes beyond my limits, I know exactly who to refer as a warm handoff. And there's something to that where if I have a person that's in my care, or that we're going through that health experience and I'm helping that individual out, if they have trust in me, they probably have trust in people that I have trust in. So there's this implicit existential trust that exists because I trust that individual. My client trusts me. They're going to have a natural affinity for that person that I trust, because it's not an unknown person necessarily. It may be an unknown person to them, but there's an affinity already because they trust me and they trust me to make good decisions for them. So the people that I know are in that kind of umbrella, if in that analogy. And so the idea of knowing where we stand within that health spectrum, that health journey, and having a network around us that we can actually refer into is, I think, a very useful thing to do in a premeditated way in order to provide the best care for an individual, particularly when it exceeds our abilities and we acknowledge that, right? So if we're dealing, as Krista alluded to before, with mental emotional aspects, and we're looking at thoughts, feelings, and actions, that triad, and what that actually means for an individual as they go through the exercise of mindful reflection on that. That's different than adverse childhood experience, which is, obviously beyond the scope of a health provider. That is more for, crisis care and someone with specific specialties in that area. And so, the idea of understanding that milieu and where we operate and how we can refer into a network that we know is a very safe space for someone to come into that experience, develop trust with us, and then, as an offshoot, have trust within those that we have trust in as professionals.
That's perfect, Michol. Yeah, that's the safe haven, isn't it? That yes, you have a lot to offer, but you operate within a certain scope of practice, but you need that network of support, and there is an inherent trust within that network. So, yeah, I think that sums that up really well.
Just real quick on that. Like if we look at the structure of other industries, they already have that implicitly. Anna spoke about this idea of generalists before, right? So, there's, a general medical professional that we might go see, and then there's specialists that are in that network that they refer into. And so that as an ecosystem has already kind of been developed. And I think in ours, it has not. It tends to be, I'm going to handle everything myself for you. And there tends to not be that willingness or perhaps that ecosystem that is developed yet. And that's perhaps in parallel with this discussion of personal trainer becoming something. I think that there's an ecosystem shift that's going to support that in terms of the structure of how and when, we involve other folks for the betterment of the care of those that we serve.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I just want to, because we're coming towards the end of our hour, but one thing I just wanted to pick up on, we've talked about supporting people through a health journey, sustainability over a period of time, this maybe slight shift from, the client taking a more active role in their own health and well-being. But I'm just thinking of the tools we have to facilitate that. And I mean, Krista talked about tangible tools, and that's great. And I guess I'm just interested that one of those tangible tools is the advent of digital technology, right? That, people are now more familiar with the online space than perhaps ever before. Personal trainers have moved, a lot of personal trainers have moved their businesses online and are working in that scenario. We have wearables that have more and more functions and abilities to support clients and providing more and more data that we could potentially use to support clients. So maybe we could just finish by talking about that. So, how do you see that, the digital side, impacting on these future roles? And maybe we could start with Anna, as I know Anna operates online.
Well, actually, I started the digital business because I felt I needed more touch points with my clients, because I felt that I had to have some kind of a frequency in the things we were working on that was hard to attain with 2 or 3 hours of personal training a week, and then they were on their own. So that evolved in actually clients being able to get in touch with some material, or with me, or with some peers, or with some of my team members, or with some of the people in the community, because this ability to reach out and there is actually someone there while you are motivated or while you're needing help. That's what the digital tools actually can offer us, is being able to kind of get help and move on, and then you're going further. The backside of some of the digital tools is, of course, this tracking and notifications and stuff like that, which I also experimented with when I started doing the online work. And I've moved away from that personally, because I like to teach people how to feel what is happening and how to interpret what they feel inside and how the body reacts. So I do not do any fancy digital things with my clients. I do not offer an app which does something, attracts something. I'm kind of an analog person in a digital world, if you can say that like that. But I do use the digital format to create a more tight net of support.
Okay, now that's really interesting, because I think a constant theme that I'm coming back to is that maybe sometimes you think of an online or a digital aspect being more distant, being socially distanced even, Michel, but it ultimately it provides this opportunity for more touch points. So, and I've heard the phrase high tech, high touch. So actually we can maintain a better contact with our clients. Does anybody want to just pick up on that, Michel or Krista?
Well, I'll jump in here, because at Precision Nutrition, we do develop our own coaching software. So this is some stuff that we've thought about for lots of years. And the thing with technology, and it's funny, like in a previous life, if you look online for my name, you'll find a book that I wrote 20 years ago about women working in information technology. And it was, I did my research in the 90s when we all thought technology was going to save us. That was like the rise of the Silicon Valley and the dot-com boom and bust years. But, with technology, it's abundantly clear that it's simply a tool. And so as a coach, it's really important for you to sit down and ask yourself, what am I actually trying to do with this tool? What is the objective of using this tool? Is this obviously and demonstrably improving my engagement with my clients? And I think, Anna, the fact that you use it for more communication is not accidental, because, whatever technical tools we have, and there's some really wonderful ones, we're still working with old hardware, 2 million year old hardware. And so, fundamentally, you have to understand that you're working with human brains and human needs that have not changed and will not change for a very long time. And so your goal with the technology is really to meet those needs and amplify those needs. So, I mean, a great example is during the pandemic, we used technology to do stuff like this, to connect as humans, because we were craving, the eye contact, the human faces, the body language. So really think about not technology is not a magical different land where people act and think and believe differently. It's a way that you can amplify the humanness of your practice, and humans will always have a need for connectedness. And yeah, you might go and try an app. A lot of clients will do this. They'll go and try an app and they'll say, you know what, I just stopped using it, either because there was nobody on the other end. It had kind of a hollowness to it. I felt like I wanted to be connected to a real person. So, as a real human being, do not devalue that, because that's super important for clients. So really think about, how can I use technology? I think, as Anna said, to become educated about ourselves, right? Can this tool help me learn about myself, give me insight into myself? That's a great application for it. Can this tool help me connect, with someone else and feel like a real attachment? That's another great use of the tool. And the third use of the tool that we've looked at a lot in our software is, how can we outsource to technology a lot of the busy work, a lot of the administration work? Has my client checked in the last 3 days? That's a great use for a tech tool, right? The computer can say, hey, listen, so-and-so hasn't checked in a few days. Maybe just send them a note, right? I don't want to be managing all my calendar and, double checking. So automate what is best to automate, and then human what's best to human. That's the way that we landed on that.
Yeah, fantastic. That's great. Amplify the humanness. I like that. Michol, you
Listen, I love what Krista said.
Yeah,
we
great.
look at technology. I mean, I always think of the words, augmentation, this idea of delivery, and then, as you spoke about, Krista, the idea of automation. So augmentation is, how does that show up for an individual? A lot of times we see, and you can look at the research on this as well, you see this idea of there's a precipitous drop of engagement after 3 weeks of a wearable, right? This data is, easy to see, and these studies have been done. And oftentimes what it is there's no relevancy. It's not an augmented experience for an individual. It's just, numbers that once I see it for the first 10 times, it's novel, it's new. And then, for the 11th through 100th time, I already know. So there's no real connection to that. The augmentation, I think, in what Anna spoke about before, was there's a person behind this. And what it does is it just augments the experience, whatever that means for the individual. And it is a vast array of what augments for individuals. That's personal likes and where they are in their journey. So augmentation, that's what technology can do, right? It can also automate, as Krista alluded to before. And there's all sorts of interesting technologies that are coming out there to automate and augment the experience. Even things that can predict crisis and health events. That's pretty useful stuff, right? If we're looking at that in terms of the person's health span, and you can predict, certain chemistry within my blood and respiration rate and heart rate variability and all this, and glucometry, that's pretty cool. And blood oxygenation, through pulse oximetry, pretty cool stuff. Maybe not for me as the consumer, because I don't know that, but the automation of that can crunch those numbers and reveal certain trend lines of real-time health data. That's pretty cool, right? But the augmentation is, what does it mean for me in real time? What does that mean for me as my journey continues? And how is that voiced to me? And what's particularly sticky is the delivery piece that I talked about before. So augmentation, delivery, and automation. Delivery is two-way, right? So it could be information that I'm opting in for you, Jules, to capture for me as my coach. But there's also this idea of, can I feel you throughout the day? And Anna was talking about that as well. Is there more touch points? And that delivery can be automated as well, right? Because of different triggering events that technology has, geofencing and near field communication, time of day. All that stuff can feel very intimate, particularly if there's a coach behind the experience that I trust. because then it's an augmented experience. I trust an individual. It's Jules, you're my health coach, or you're my guide by my side. And even though it may be coming to me through my technology, whatever that technology would be, right? There is utility and there is validity and there's a kind of a relevance to that, particularly because it amplifies off of a connection of human to human. And I think when we've seen that, we've seen a greater degree of success than just, here's a technology play and a programming tech that, is just pushed towards an individual. There is no sustainability, or typically there's not as much sustainability in that particular experience, because I think what creates trust, what creates sustained reinforcement is that awareness, adoption, advocacy through that journey, right? And if there is a guide by the side, and sometimes that guide by the side is, my belief in you is stronger than your doubt. Maybe that's where it starts, which is the locus of control is not with me, right? It is the belief of this individual that they have within me. That sometimes is the on-ramp that leads to the behavior change, that leads to a positive health experience sustainably. So wherever that on-ramp is for the individual, it is, right? And we meet them there. And then, that technology can be a facilitator to usher the experience. But we've seen that does not happen within our experience and what we've done technologically is where it's used to replace. There is not the same level of outcome.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's an excellent summary of where we're going with the digital side of things and how we can harness the positive advantages that digital technology can bring. Okay, guys. Well, you guys are good. I've got to say, I've thoroughly enjoyed that. It was an excellent discussion, I think. And I think the one thing that I sort of am taking from this really is that perhaps over the last couple of years or so, the last 18 months particularly, we're seeing an acceleration of a lot of trends. We're seeing the progression of our profession. I need to be very aware of that, and in terms of education and the standards that we offer at EuropeActive. And I know, Krista, you're and all of you at the forefront of this, but I'm thinking of your role as a curriculum director, Krista. But overall, I would say it's a very exciting time to be a personal trainer or a coach, however we choose to describe that. This is a time of some change, of some advancement, of some great opportunity, I think. And I think that's a very positive note, considering what maybe we've all been through over the last few months or so, to end on, that it's a great time to be a personal trainer, a health coach, whatever that is. Okay, so I now need to conclude. So thanks to you all. Been brilliant. Great to see you again, Michol. Great to meet you, Krista. Thanks for the input, and Anna, as ever. Thanks for your insights. Just to finally remind everybody that this has been a pre-event for our European Health and Fitness Forum, which is going to be a virtual event, 3rd of November this year. Please make sure you register for that event, and you can take advantage of the early bird rate there, and please do. That will be a fantastic event. I know we've got some fantastic speakers there, and I'm sure they'll pick up on many of the themes that we've discussed today. But yeah, thanks to you all, guys. Thanks for joining us, you guys in Canada and America at such an early hour. Hope to talk to you all again on similar subjects soon. Thank you, guys.